Chartered Adventuring!
Greetings, adventurers! Welcome to another Session Zero where we talk to the personalities and people behind our campaigns and games. Today, I am here with Tom Barrett, currently playing a major character in the Wondrous Gateway to Oz, which I am currently the DM of. My name is Patrick Henry. Welcome, Tom. I'm glad you're here, setting this all up for me and then letting me do the introductions.
I'm glad to be interviewed by you. This is kind of a change. I'm usually the one hosting this, so this is going to be fun.
So going back for our first question, we're going to go way back to about 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not exactly sure when the initial concept got started, but we did have a prototype version of the campaign that I ran on the cuff. I don't remember the exact reasons or the circumstances behind it, but I was running the game with very minimal prep and learning what to do. And we discussed the possibility of players playing a talking animal in the Session Zero, which ended up being the first game. And you leapt at the opportunity to play a bear.
That's right.
So beyond the obvious reasons of it being awesome to play a bear, like, why are you so excited for a talking bear character for Oz?
At first, so the campaign you're talking about was at least 2 years ago. And I remember that you had mentioned you wanted to run one in Oz, and my eyes lit up because I've done a lot of role-playing, but I haven't ever done anything that was set in the land of Oz. And I knew enough about it to know how exciting it could be, but I didn't know enough that I could run a game, but I was over the moon excited to try and play a character. And when you told us that we could play characters that were based in Oz...
Yes.
And you said you rattled off a bunch of different options, and I think at one point you said a talking animal. I said, "Oh, can I be a talking bear?" It was such a departure from the normal D&D role-playing game. Like, I'm not just playing somebody who has a spell that can turn into a bear. I'm playing a bear, like an actual, for all intents and purposes, the exact same thing as a regular Earth bear. I can just talk, and I have a little crown on my head. Just like this guy.
Just like the Photoshop that we did. One of the things that I like is how adequately, or I shouldn't even say adequately, how excellently you role play a bear as a sentient creature that would be able to move around and talk. You very carefully go into details about how you would sit up and have your legs sitting out in front of you with your feet sticking up, sitting up looking at what's ahead of you. The lumbering way that you describe yourself moving like lazily as a large animal could. I just think that it's pretty impressive that you're able to pull all that and so eloquently bring the concept to life, personally.
Thank you.
Yeah. You just mentioned that you have extensive role-playing experience, and having immersed yourself in the Forgotten Realms universe, Vampire the Masquerade, and other role-playing games and settings, what is your favorite setting, and how does the experience from all your time role-playing, and also how many years have you done it,
Ooh.
how does that translate into the current game?
I mean, ever since I can remember, I've been doing something regarding playing a role and making a game out of it. I mean, kids do that, and for me, I remember in elementary school, I'd have little pieces of graph paper that I would draw little mazes in, and I would draw little, sixth grade version pictures of little monsters, and I'd have my friends go through the dungeon and tell them what was going on as they were roaming the halls of these dungeons. As far as my favorite game, I think I've spent the most time with Dungeons and Dragons. It's always been a mainstay. I was a kid of, like, when I was first coming up, it was right in the middle of the 80s satanic panic when, all this kind of stuff, anything having to do with other realms or magic, all the parents in religious households, which is what I was a part of, they hated all of it. Like, there was a lot of argument. So playing Dungeons and Dragons was one of those, sneak out of your house to your friend's house kind of treats. Like, other kids, they would go out and watch an R-rated movie or something, just something rebellious that only the kids do when they're away from home. For me, it was role-playing games, whether it was sitting down and playing D&D with my brother and his friend, or not my brother, my friend and his brother and their friends, or just kind of, being around when the game was going on and being invited in for different groups that I used to, hang out with. D&D's always been something that I've loved. And Forgotten Realms, that's something that's been with me for as long as I've been playing D&D, really. And when I discovered the R.A. Salvatore books, the Dark Elf trilogy, the Icewind Dale trilogy, I was so enraptured by the characters and the writing that it made me want to delve deeper and become a better role player so that I could more embody that kind of detail and everything. So and those kind of skills translated into all the other role playing games that I've loved to play. I've run Vampire the Masquerade for quite a long time.
Yes,
There was a 5-year period where I was actually in charge of a large group of LARPers. I say with some chagrin because LARPers are generally looked down upon, but we had a great group. We had 128 people at one point.
That's not just a group. That's everybody.
That was a lot of paperwork for a game. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, I try to make sure that I learn something new with every character I play and try to refine how I do what I do, whether it's running a game or being a player. I want to bring, my A game to the table because I want my players to do the same. And I want my whoever's running the game, the DM or the historian of Oz, I want them to feel that I'm giving as much as they're putting in.
And as I mentioned before, you can definitely tell just from the 2 episodes we've ran of your bear character just how much you put into it. And also in the Bunbury campaign, the one-shot that we did and then is available on the channel, your character really he started out alarming the entire town and then learning a lesson on the way. Yep. So that you can tell from the thoughtfulness and your sense of experience how much you put into your characters. Even a one-shot character can grow and learn a lot.
The chocolate muffin topper definitely had a character arc through those 2 episodes. It was a lot of fun to play.
And that's hard to do over just a couple short hour sessions to get that believable arc built in, but I feel like it was successfully done.
I think everybody did a great job with the Elsewhere's game.
It was fun, yeah, and we have more coming too. So you said to me that one of the reasons that you're excited for an Oz campaign is that it is a fantasy world you aren't familiar with, because whereas for me, Oz was something that I grew up with as a child reading, and I watched the movie, but then the books became my personal obsession like the Salvatore books did for you. Having immersed yourself with that particular universe, now you're playing in Oz, and it's one that you've admitted that you're not familiar with. Talk about the challenge of role-playing a character who is the king of his own local forest while also not understanding or not knowing much about the Oz universe together. You do get to explore as you have your little kingdom. You'll learn about Oz as a player and as a character too. But talk about the challenge of making a character and then making it believable for that area without knowing as much about the lore or history of it.
When I made the character, you kind of gave me the cliff notes of, this guy's in charge of everything. You're in charge of this little area. This is what's immediately around you. And I think for Bumblespeaker, the bear character, I think it kind of comes in handy playing that character that I don't know what's outside or what's around. Like I don't know Oz, and much like Bumblespeaker, when he leaves the forest, he doesn't know a lot about anything. He knows his own little neck of the woods. I mean, no pun intended, but it's his own little stretch of wood, and everything outside of that's going to be new and amazing to him, which I think is going to be translated just in the fact that I don't know it. So when I learn the new stuff, when you sit there with all this knowledge and you're like, hey, look at this. Now look at this. I'm going to be, oh, wow. I'm going to look like the kids on the paddle boat in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Like
seeing all the amazing things.
That's right.
Sometimes literally in that case, the Chocolate Factory, maybe even. Ooh. Not that exactly, but candy. But what are you most excited about with your King Bumblespeaker character? Where do you see him going, or what excites you to role play as him?
I like the seeming innocence of Oz, and I like that we're combining Oz with D&D, but it's not that we're doing Oz as a D&D campaign. We're doing a D&D campaign that impinges on what Oz already is. So that innocence and that naivete is going to be shattered in some form or fashion by the darker, more realistic influences of D&D. For all that there is magic and monsters, there aren't that kind of thing in Oz. So
no.
I'm wondering how Bumblespeaker is going to confront that challenge as somebody that doesn't get into that kind of conflict, how he's going to deal with it, how he's going to, but just react. I'm sure there's going to be some episode where he's just going to, the pressures are just going to boil over and he's just going to lose it. And I'm looking forward to that, not for Bumblespeaker, because I think it's going to end up, hurting him some way.
Right.
But I'm excited to see what this character can do when he gets pushed to that point.
You're excited to see the growth potential and whether it could break or hurt him too. Right. It could fundamentally change his current personality as a gentle giant of a character.
Right, exactly.
His area. Yeah,
I want to see what happens when that innocence that it embodies Oz is kind of stripped away by the encroachment of the Forgotten Realms universe.
Oh, and that right there would sum up the entire concept of the campaign itself and the new stories that arise from Oz. So, completely unrelated to the questions we've been asking, you've been identified as an Ozhole, which is a person who dislikes the Wizard of Oz movie. So,
is that really the title?
That is the title that is apparently given to people who don't like the movie for whatever reason. Right. Ozhole, which I find hilarious, which is why we're bringing it up in the interview. But when I did bring up the campaign back in those 2 years ago, your eyes did light up and you were excited about it. And then you also have mentioned previously that you've read the first book upon when I gave you a copy of it.
I did, and I enjoyed the book. And much like, I have several examples of I liked the book better than the movie. For The Wizard of Oz, for me, even watching it as a kid, I was never that big into musicals to begin with. And the absolute saccharine nature and the color scheme and the everything about it just was kind of too much for me.
Of course, yeah.
There are parts of that movie that I very much enjoyed watching, just from, especially later on in life, as from an old special effects perspective, and some of the things they did. But as a whole, it is not a movie that I would choose to watch again.
That's okay. That's perfectly okay. It's not every movie is made for everyone, and I'm not intending to put you down for not liking it. I think you should embrace the Ozhole title wholly and completely. But even knowing that, with that difference in the movie, you're still excited to play an Oz campaign. And are you finding it better than the movie then?
Oh, absolutely. The sheer amount of information and detail that exists in the world of Oz over the 100 and some odd years it's been around versus the hour and a half long movie, there's no comparison. I very much look forward to seeing what else Oz brings to the table. Yeah,
there is 40 books worth of material in the canon Oz, and there's tons of other things available too that can be tweaked to make them workable in the story, I would say.
Wow.
But yeah. So finally, is there anything else that you want to say about your role-playing experience, favorite past characters, perhaps favorite moments in the campaign so far, or anything that you just want to mention before we go?
Well, I'm actually just grateful that we've made it through COVID, and we're still doing this virtually. We used to get together at my dining room table and all sit around and argue with one another in person. But I'm glad that Charted Adventuring is finally being able to get back on track and get some recordings down after 2 years of being away. Without we've still been playing, but just not effectively enough to record anything. So I like that we're able to do this again and kind of present it to people who might want to watch it. And I hope you do. I hope everybody that watches this likes, subscribes, shares it, put it in your notifications so when a new one of these pops up, you're the first one to watch it. Thanks everybody for watching, and I very much appreciate every single view that we get.
Yeah, absolutely. Every view we get and any comment we get will be looked at and analyzed extensively.
Obsessively, almost.
For me, anyway, because I run the game, so I like feedback on stuff that's happening. In any case, I want to thank you, Tom, for being here and talking about your character and your role-playing experience and history. My name again is Patrick Henry. I was here with Tom Barrett. We were talking about the Wondrous Gateway to Oz and elsewheres in Oz storylines in our campaign. Please check us out on YouTube at Chartered Adventuring or Wondrous Gateway to Oz or elsewheres in Oz. And like, subscribe, and check us out.
Yeah.
Survive COVID and come out on the other end, everybody.
Get vaccinated.
Get vaccinated. Absolutely, yes. And until next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You want thingamabob?